Hello and welcome to BharatShakti.in. I'm Nitin Gokhale. On today's special program, we are going to discuss something that is happening or has happened in Jammu and Kashmir over the past year and a half or so. Pakistan's continuing proxy war and its effect on the population, as well as the undeniable proof that our team has put together by going on the ground and collecting evidence from FIRs, photographs, and some of the discussions that they've had with the locals. And joining me in this discussion is someone who has seen Jammu and Kashmir for a long time up close, culminating as Corps Commander of Srinagar Base 15 Corps, and later, of course, looking at the Army's overall procurement policies as Deputy Chief, retired some years ago, and now security and defense analyst of great repute. Welcome to this program, General Saha, and always a pleasure to talk to you on these issues.
Thank you, Nitin, for getting me on the show. And nice to see you're back, all fit and fine.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's a slow progress, but something that I had to start after my recent surgery. But moving on to the business at hand, you've seen some of the reports that we have put up on our website, bharatshakti.in, and our sister website, evidence collected and then collated very painstakingly about Pakistan's continuing proxy war and backing the jihadi networks to stir the pot in Jammu and Kashmir. As a military officer, as an army officer who's dealt with Jammu and Kashmir so extensively, why do you think Pakistan compulsorily continues to do what it does? Because there is so much of flack it gets internationally, or it has its own problems at home. But this does not seem to end anywhere as far as Pakistan is concerned.
Okay, firstly, Nitin, I must compliment your team for putting together a report like this. It's very comprehensive. It has actually covered a lot as far as the infiltration is concerned. And I think it has also covered what is happening in the valley, so to speak. And more importantly, at the targeted killings that are taking place, basically how the targeting has shifted to the much more vulnerable sections, in Kashmir particularly, and of course overall in Jammu and Kashmir. So I think it's a good job done. That said,
Thank
coming
you.
to your question, you see, unfortunately, Pakistan is a creation of the partition, and the partition is a creation of power politics. It is not a creation of anything to do with people or people related politics. So that fundamental doesn't change. Having said that, we have seen this consistently all along. And way back in 1965, I think one of their papers, which was ordered by Ayub Khan, had come up with this recommendation that the way to deal with India is to, go the irregular or the proxy way of contesting India. Now let's come fast forward. I think the state in which Pakistan is today, whether you want to look at it economically, whether you want to look at it militarily, whether you want to look at it politically, I think in every which way, Pakistan is in dire straits now. And beyond that, the shock that they got of what happened on 5th August 2019, I think they haven't recovered from it. And you could see that there was a little dip because I think they were re strategizing. And now what we are seeing, a whole lot of, new strategies to deal with Jammu and Kashmir. We will keep the Pakistan's internal issue away for a while. One, as you can quite clearly see, creation of these new groups like the Resistance Front, which which came to notice actually sometime around October of 2019, precisely 2 months after 5th August. And the other thing is, which we are noticing, parallelly, certain announcements which are being made, at least some promises which are being made to uplift the state of affairs in Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So effectively, what they are trying to put out as the narrative is A, we will keep the pot boiling, as you said, and B is to try and show that they can look after the population, they can take the population towards progress and prosperity, so to speak. In this one, of course, your reports have already chronicled very well how the resistance front, which has tried to give the same a little indigenous character, and which actually those who are in it know it very well. It is nothing else but yet another like level of proxy. On the one hand, Lashkar-e-Taiba is the proxy of Pakistan, particularly Pakistan's ISI, and here the TRF is nothing else but a proxy of Lashkar-e-Taiba. So it is multiple layers of proxy, so to speak. So that's one thing. And second is, in trying to target, the primarily, if you are seeing, the targeting is going on to people who are more vulnerable, people who are from outside Kashmir, with whom what TRF is trying to do is to put out a narrative that they are here. And by the way, they are not putting it out as an agenda of the government of India, but they are trying to put it out as an agenda of the RSS, as an agenda
Right.
of the political the political party, i.e. BJP. So therefore, trying to create a divide. In a recent incident when some migrant workers from Bihar were attacked, a false narrative was put out that this is being done in retaliation to the killing of X number of Muslims in Bihar, which was a completely false narrative, and it had no connection with there was no reality in that. So effectively, this is what they are trying to do. One, give it an indigenous character. B, how to create a divide and shall we say take the build a false narrative for the Muslim population, the majority Muslim population. And alongside that are also, which is sad actually, targeting some very renowned Kashmiri pundits who are very well respected, like the pharmacy chain, then that famous the famous restaurant over there, so and some school teachers. So these are very, very well respected people about whom, irrespective of political affiliations, people have spoken so highly of them at different forums at different times. So therefore, targeting these people. On the
True.
one side,
So,
this is what they are trying to do, to keep the
yeah.
pot boiling, and on the other side, if you follow the announcements which have been made by the so-called Prime Minister of Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir in their assembly, they are trying to put out some programs. They are talking about a bullet train. I don't know where the money will come from. They are talking about an international airport. They are talking about a special economic zone for women. They are talking about building the cottage industries by spending Pakistan 500 million rupees, and of course all other IT parks and so on and so forth. So effectively, trying to ape India's development plans in Jammu and Kashmir by making such announcements and at the same time keeping the pot boiling. So I think this is the broad strategy. Why they are doing it, I think it's a continuity of this is a very continuous effort, but there is an intensification for sure
The old
because they are
politics.
some kind of a resolution in sight. And it is not only to do with Jammu and Kashmir. I think they are all watching the way, for example, all the trouble spots of Northeast have been, have been settled, literally are being settled one after the other. First the Bodoland was settled, the Bru was settled, Karbi Anglong was settled, Nagaland there seems to be some very positive
Some progress there.
developments.
That's
AFPA
true.
has been removed from so many parts of Northeast. So
Yes.
all this, they are not missing it. So therefore, they want to keep the pot boiling here, intensify it, so that this disturbed condition does not go away from here. And
True. And
if you take it backward, if you
yeah,
take it
it's a low
backwards,
cost
it is
option.
to do
It's a,
it is to do with the
yeah.
divisions in Pakistan, which sort of compels them to keep this strategy against them, because in the old mindset there is still that belief that if there is something that can rally the Pakistanis, it is of course India as
Kashmir.
the perpetual enemy and Kashmir as the center point.
True. No, I completely agree with you. In fact, one interesting point comes out from your analysis is also this new approach to try and project Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir as a competition to the Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, Indian Jammu and Kashmir, and to say that we're trying to give enough development to the people there, which has not been Pakistan's priority for more than 75 years now. So that's an interesting point, and which I think there's a lot of catch up to do, which I don't think they'll be able to do. But that apart, I think the other interesting point that you made is very valid. That this government is trying to settle the old disputes, old insurgencies are being wound up in many places in the northeast, and therefore Pakistan has to keep India on its toes somewhere, and that is the most obvious spot, really. But what I want to take you up on the next point for discussion is the point that you made about the internal divisions in Pakistan. Now, ever since Imran Khan was ousted, and Bajwa sort of seemed to have gained victory there, and of course Shahbaz Sharif has become the prime minister. The internal situation in Pakistan is there for all of us to see. Where do you see this going, and then what effect will the outcome of that internal situation will have on India generally and on Jammu and Kashmir in particular?
See, I think the first thing is the Pakistan army is finding itself in a morass of its own making. Okay, first, they sort of backed Imran Khan and the PTI, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, to form the government. After they formed this government, the first thing that happened was Bajwa was given an extension. So they had succeeded in their strategy of shifting away from directly ruling Pakistan to ruling Pakistan by proxy. Now that whole business seems to have boomeranged, and really speaking, the shall we say the flashpoint was the way they were dealing with that previous DG of ISI, Hamid, sometime around September last year. When Imran Khan wanted Faiz Hamid to continue as DG ISI, but Bajwa got him shifted out from there and moved him as the Peshawar Corps commander. I think that was actually the watershed moment in the struggle for power that developed between Bajwa and Imran Khan. And of course, to give it a cover, they went back to the policy in Pakistan that the gentleman should have done a corps commander for at least 6 months for being eligible to become the chief. And if you go by the line of succession, and if they choose not to give another extension to Bajwa, then in the natural line of succession, it appears it is Faiz Hamid who should be the next. But now comes the question that now that they have pulled the rug from under Imran Khan, does Imran Khan's favorite still continue? So all this brings to fore the power struggle which is there between Bajwa, I think, and Imran Khan, between, of course, PMLN and PTI. We are seeing all of that playing out on a playing field which otherwise is also in dire straits because of Pakistan's economic condition. I mean, the kind of pressure which Pakistan is under, IMF is refusing to extend the loan which they had, agreed to give them, $6 billion loan. And in order to make up for that, when they went to Saudi Arabia and UAE, they also responded by saying that first you get the loan from IMF. In other words, go through the due diligence of IMF, and then we will consider loans for you. Yeah. So right now it is in a terrible state. It is because of the pressure of the IMF that Pakistan has had to remove the subsidies on fuel. I mean, in a span between end May and beginning July of just about 35-40 days, the fuel prices were upwardly revised by 3 times. And now with the by-elections which are coming up in Punjab, due sometime around 17th of July, the situation is actually very, very hot. Now, Imran Khan has announced a number of rallies between, in fact, starting today and 15 July. And I think
Right.
16 rallies he has announced at different parts of Punjab. These rallies, as at least his, that March for Freedom, Azadi March and whatever, they drew huge crowds, and they suspect that he will be drawing these crowds. So therefore, they see, the Pakistan army sees that even in what they are hoping for PMLN to come, because this is going to be the acid test of PMLN's popularity on the ground, these by-elections. But at the same
Exactly.
time, because they have got caught into this morass, first you support a government, then you pull your support, and the cover which is being put out, the excuse which is being made is, okay, now we are neutral. We are not going to get involved in anything to do with Pakistan's politics. And so much so that, as per the media reports, Pakistan Army GHQ has refused to deploy Pakistan Army for the by-elections, for polling duties. And not only that, Pakistan's governor, Pakistan Punjab's governor Chima, had written to Bajwa to help sort out the political mess in Punjab, Pakistan Punjab. That also, I think, he chose not to get involved. So now they are trying to put this, stance of neutrality, trying to say that Pakistan Army is not involved in the politics of Pakistan, because it is hurting their morale, it is hurting their professionalism, and they would like to steer clear of it. How this whole thing is going to unfold, well, one can clearly see a terrible mess. And if you go on to the other side, really, between China and Pakistan, it is not as if things are going very well. We are seeing, in fact, in the last month and a half itself, there have been some very, very severe pain points there. First, of course, China not agreeing to let Pakistan into BRICS. They were very keen to come
Yeah.
into BRICS, and it is
As
widely
observers,
believed
at
that,
least. Even that they didn't agree. Yeah.
exactly,
Right.
exactly, it is widely believed that China has done so on the insistence of India, and also supported by Russia. So, which obviously does not go down well in Pakistan, number one. Second, more recently, these security concern for Chinese nationals and various incidents happening in different parts. Now, China wanted to open and operate a security company in Pakistan with which they would provide security to their own forces. And mind you, this is after the division-sized force that was created for this security. Despite that, China wanted their own, to set up their own security setup, to which Pakistan, interestingly, has said no. And
Correct.
just this morning, the open source intelligence says that now China has appointed a senior police officer to look after the security of the Chinese nationals, the government, Chinese government officials, etc., numbering
Yeah.
over 6,500 in
True.
Pakistan. So there are tensions between China and Pakistan. There are, of course, serious tensions now between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So all of
Exactly.
it is actually playing out. I mean, we have seen, as recently as April this year, we have seen Pakistan Air Force carrying out airstrikes along the border, in which 45 civilians were killed in Afghanistan. And they said it is in retaliation to the Pakistan army soldiers killed, but obviously it doesn't go down well. Even within Pakistan, on the internal side, although Afghanistan Taliban had managed to sponsor a ceasefire between Pakistan, the TTP, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, and the Pakistan government. But even that is not going down well, because these TTP leaders are very clear that unless and until they do a reversal of the merger of FATA with merger of the of merger of FATA with the other tribal areas, they are not going to accept this ceasefire for very long. So all in all, it is quite a mess, And in between, there was this great celebration that they are going to be taken out of the FATF list, which also has been
True.
clarified now that, okay, not without a visit, not without an
Exactly.
on-site visit, which also is in kind of suspension, because if you see the statements which have come out from the FATF and the FATF's outgoing chief, they have said that we will do an on-site visit when the COVID situation permits. So, which is quite
Yeah.
vague, like one really
It's
doesn't
vague.
know
Yeah. There is
which
no deadline to it. There's no deadline to it.
exactly.
Mm. That's true. So now, that's what I have wanted to check with you that all this, given the turmoil internally in Pakistan, there is no respite that India or Jammu and Kashmir should expect. But on its own, as someone who has dealt with both the hard and the soft side of development and security policies in Jammu and Kashmir, what would you advocate now that we are completing 3 years of the abrogation of Article 370 coming August? What do you think the Indian government should do more from apart from whatever it is doing right now currently to make sure that Pakistan becomes irrelevant, even if it sort of tries to stir the pot or keep the pot boiling, it should become irrelevant in the people's mind. What do you think are the few steps that you can think as something that can be recommended?
Yeah, so you see, first, I think the government is already acting in that direction, so to speak. The economic initiatives which have been announced, they have to be, moved at a very, rapid pace. If you recall, about a couple of months back, there were literally on a daily basis 1 to 2 central ministers who are visiting Jammu and Kashmir, taking stock of the various programs that have been rolled out. I think that initiative needs to be sustained, it needs to be intensified, because that is where the people start seeing the change. And we have ourselves seen the change. I mean, literally, we see the tricolors almost all over Jammu and Kashmir, and we have seen how all important national days have been celebrated now in Jammu and Kashmir, and really speaking, without much fear. I mean, despite these incidents, targeted killings we have spoken about, activities are taking place. In fact, I have participated in a couple of seminars in Kashmir only in the recent past, talking to a whole lot of youngsters. They are all, they are all looking for the change. They are all waiting for the change. So the point is, all this has to be moved forward and continue to be intensified. Number one. Second thing is on the political side. I think the sooner we can go back to what it was, stated, that the elections for the assembly followed by restoration of the status of a state, of a full-fledged state, I think will completely change, or shall we say, remove any misgivings of the intentions as they are. Now, alongside that, I think the one area where Jammu and Kashmir really needs a push is the youth. I think a whole lot of youth programs, sports activities, a whole lot of employment oriented activities are a must. And I have seen it myself with a meager budget of 25 crores for, with a meager budget of 25 crores for Sadbhavna, we could achieve a hell of a lot, primarily because we chose to invest the 25 crores mostly on the youth, because this is
Correct.
where I think the attention is required, and this is where the change will happen. We are seeing the change, but to spread the scope and the speed of the change, I think a lot more can be done and needs to be done. From a military point of view, I think most important is to make sure that the line of control and the counter infiltration posture is very, very strong. And not only the deployment, the surveillance part, the intelligence part, infusion of technology, all of it put together is very, very important. And in the hinterland, I think between the Rashtriya Rifles and the CRPF, and of course Jammu and Kashmir Police, it's a reasonably strong grid, and they will be able to, keep the situation quite balanced. We are seeing so far the Amarnath Yatra also so far has,
Doing well.
if any disruptions have occurred, it has happened because of weather and it has
Weather.
happened because of terrain. Mercifully, nothing
True.
has happened because of the security side. And that having
Yes.
been said, the literally the removal or elimination of the separatist lobby is also definitely contributing to an otherwise, nuisance value which was there. So that certainly is helping. So I don't think that Pakistan is in a position to create much more than what it is doing. And so these can be managed from a military security perspective. When I say military, I speak about the army as well as the
Security.
CRPF
Yeah.
and Jammu and Kashmir Police, BSF were
True.
available, all of them put together. So all in all, I don't think Pakistan is in any position to stop Jammu and Kashmir heading the way, heading the positive way that it is heading so far. And the government initiatives, if rolled forward, I think they will start showing results. Also, if you see the kind of strict actions which are being taken against some of the people who are subverted and who had infiltrated into the state government of JNK, I think that is also a very good step, which is putting that fear, of the establishment that you cannot get away by doing the wrong things from positions of influence, from positions of authority. So that drive also that cleansing of the system also must continue. I think all of this put
That's
together
true.
should see a better future.
No, no, certainly, indeed. In fact, and as you rightly put it, it's on a right trajectory. It maybe needs a little speeding up, little boost from everyone concerned, including the youth and the people. But I think that atmosphere of fear that one is to see has vanished certainly, and that's a first good step for any state to develop and progress. And the documentation that we spoke about, that my team had done in Jammu and Kashmir, I think needs to be publicized a little more. I would think to the world. I know it's being done in the past, but if we can do it a little more, perhaps Pakistan's perfidy will be exposed further, and the world will really know what Pakistan stands for, rather than just keep supporting its elite blindly in terms of economic aid and development assistance that IMF or the Western nations keep giving. But General Saab, thank you very much for your time and your insights. It's always a pleasure to get your opinion, because you've spent so much time on the ground and you understand the pulse of the people. So thanks very much for this discussion and your time here.
Thank you very much, Nitin. Wish you all the best. And I think these reports are going to do wonders. Once they spread, more people will come to know. And you can already see some reactions which are there in the social media and all on the kind of value that people are deriving out of the reports. So I wish you well
True.
in these ventures. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you
having me.
very much. I will pass this compliment on to my team, and thank you very much for joining us here. So, viewers, that's Lieutenant Subrata giving us his insights into Jammu and Kashmir, Pan's designs on Jammu and Kashmir situation or its proxy war and terrorism that it continues to support. Do subscribe to bharatshakti.in's YouTube channel, and of course, you know where to reach us on our social media handles. Keep sending us feedback, and we will bring you more interesting discussions and topics which you can watch and then have a reaction to. For the time being, it's goodbye.